busy week.
Call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to a special board meeting in the Nevada Irrigation District for the sole purpose of talking about the drought situation and conducting a public hearing. Would you all join me in a salute to the flag, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Division 1?
Here.
Division 2?
Here.
Division 3?
Here.
Division 4?
Here.
And Division 5?
Here.
Okay. One general order today. Before we get started, I'd just like to call out some thank yous to the staff, to the board, to the stakeholders in the community that contributed to coming up with this decision today. It was a process we did not take lightly. It took some time, but I think we got there. Especially I want to thank the staff for their input in doing that. And to those water distribution operators who will be tasked with keeping the ditches full and not letting a drop run over, you have a task ahead of you, and we recognize that today. But we are all in this together as a difficult situation. And like I said, we don't take it lightly, and hopefully we can have covered most of the bases. So with that, we will turn it over to Chip, who will present the resolution before us today. Chip?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that.
Comment on items on the agenda. I don't know.
We're going to have a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Yes. This is a public hearing.
Okay. I just wondered if we had
Yeah.
just the public comment.
It's all right. I'm usually
Sorry,
glad
everyone.
for that.
Sorry for interrupting.
So good afternoon, everybody. Chip Close, Water Operations Manager, and thank you to everybody for taking time out of your day for this special board meeting. It's an important one and kind of an unusual time to meet, but given where we are with the water supply conditions, it's very important. So I was going to start off this meeting and just kind of read through the resolution, but we got our latest water supply numbers in just this afternoon, so I may put a couple slides up on the wall and let you know where we're at if you're interested. But for the general public, we are here today to discuss escalation of drought response. We're going to go through the current water supply numbers, give a brief review and the background on how we got here, and then we'll conduct a public hearing, and then we will review or consider adopting Resolution 2021-21. First, I'll start with the background, then we'll jump into the slides. For those of you that haven't participated in the last 4 or 5 board meetings, we got here because of the hydrologic conditions we are all experiencing, and really started way back in April and months before that. But on April 21st, Governor Newsom issued a state of emergency proclamation stating that much of the West is experiencing severe to exceptional drought. The drought emergency included multiple counties across California, including all the counties that NID serves. NID, in response to that, declared its own drought emergency on April 28th at the Board of Directors meeting. Then on May 26th, the Board of Directors authorized the purchase of roughly 16,000 acre-feet of PG&E water to help bolster our supplies for 2022, with a huge shot in the arm and a great benefit. The board also directed staff to explore options for escalation of drought to mandatory levels should voluntary conservation not be realized. And unfortunately, the initial customer response to voluntary reductions was not providing significant enough reduction in water use to bolster carryover storage, although I'm happy to say that it is increasing now. I think the message is getting out there now. We've had, I think it's around 58 ag water or irrigation water customers that have voluntarily cut back now, and we're about 500 acre-feet we're going to save by those cutbacks. So that's impressive, and we hope that continues. And I think the actions today will actually accelerate that, or at least I hope. The treated water customers, the report will be due in the next couple of days, and so I'll be able to let you know what that usage looks like at the next board. Okay. So anyways, in response to an approach to mandatory levels of drought plans, staff came back with a hybrid approach with a mix of actions. from the district's water shortage contingency plan. The recommendations were reviewed, critiqued, and adjusted per board and public response at the June 9th and June 25th board of directors meetings. And the final recommendations have been incorporated into Resolution 2021-21 for your review and potential vote today. Staff will continue to monitor carryover storage, and that's going to be the key moving forward, as we have talked about in the previous couple of meetings. We're going to monitor that in real time, make sure we're getting close to our targets or above, and if we're not, we'll be back here having this discussion again about potentially increasing mandatory reduction levels. But for now, we're hopeful that the action set forth in this resolution before us today will be enough. With that, I'd like to go ahead and jump into a couple of slides. So we'll start, this one looks very familiar to everybody, and this really hasn't changed much again. But essentially, the entire state of California is in drought, and it's not going to improve until winter comes and hopefully provides us something. This is a Bowman Lake precipitation reporting station. We ended the year at 34.10. If you remember at the last board meeting, it was 34.03. That rain dance is really starting to kick in. I'm telling you, it's rare to get rain this time of year, so we're getting there. But we had a party this morning. That party we had a celebration that we ended the water year this morning, and we're starting a new water year for next year, and we put a banner up. Staff the hydrographers put a banner up that says, Happy New Rain Year, hoping for more rain next year. So anyways, we ended the year at 34.10, which is 49% of average, very bleak. I think it ends up being the third driest year on record for us here at NID. This is what our reservoir storage looked like at the last board meeting, or actually on the 16th, 192,000 acre feet, which was 71% of capacity, 79% of our average. This is what it looks like now. Basically, a couple of weeks later, we're now at 184,747. So you can see we're in the midst of an irrigation season, and the water's going out into the system as it should. We're hopeful that those conservation measures in the resolution today will help lessen that slope as we move forward towards our carryover targets. Treated water usage, I don't have updates for you on this just yet. I'll have it at the next board meeting. And then this is kind of where we were at. So initially, we anticipated having 91,700 acre feet of carryover storage at the end of the year. We bought the PG&E water. That put us to 106,700 acre feet. And so that's kind of where we're at. You'll notice in the resolution that we are targeting to stay above 105,000 acre feet by the end of the year. If we start diving below that target number, we're going to have to start talking about an escalation of drought response again. But I'm hopeful we won't be there. And then for review, this is if you take the PG&E purchase, puts us at 106,700. If we are to get 20% in conservation, we anticipate ending somewhere around that 124,000 acre feet, and then 30% would be roughly 130,000 acre feet. Given that we're already halfway through the irrigation season, though, those numbers are probably going to be a little bit lower now. So that's where we currently sit in our water supply. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to walk through a couple of the recommendations in the resolution, and then we can open it up. So there's a lot of whereas that kind of describe how we got to where we're at, but the meat of what the district is proposing to implement is on page, they're not numbered, but so page 4. So the bottom of page 4, it begins with a bunch of conservation measures that the district is putting in place. But not only are these captured in this resolution today, they are also part of the district's rules and regulations. These are things that we always ask our customers to abide by. And these are things like do not apply irrigation water in a manner that it causes runoff. Make sure you have your hose bib has got a shut-off nozzle when you're washing your car. Don't irrigate in a manner that you're washing off your driveways and sidewalks. Use a broom instead. Use of irrigation or potable water in a fountain that does not recycle the water. The application of irrigation or potable water within 48 hours after a measurable rainfall, and the service of drinking water at restaurants without being requested, also a no-no. And then the watering of street medians and things like that with irrigation or potable water, ornamental turf, not warranted. And then all new building codes must abide by the WELO water efficient landscaping ordinances, and we asked the county to implement that for us, because they're the land use authority and the building permit authority. Yes, sir.
Chip, on number E, measurable rainfall,
Yeah.
Yeah.
how much is that?
Yeah.
Because what I do is sometimes when it rains a half inch or an inch, and I know I need to apply an inch and a half, I'll put half inch of irrigated water on top, just to sub it in better.
Yes. So again, this is for irrigation purposes, and I'm not sure it applies to agriculture in the same fashion. This is about like watering your lawn. If it rains, you're not supposed to re-water your lawn until 48 hours afterwards. So it's not that specific, but again, these are regulations that came from the state during the last drought. We've put them into our rules and regs.
Just don't waste water.
Exactly. In the
Yeah.
future, we could be more specific if that's where we want to take this.
Okay.
So, again, these are very general, and a lot of these came from the state's recommendations. If you move into page 5, about halfway down, that's where we get to the crux of the mandatory reductions. And
Chip, I'm sorry, I have to ask a question while we're still here, or would you like me to wait until the end?
By all means.
Okay, so I have two questions. On item G that we just covered, ornamental turf on public street medians. Okay, who is in charge of that? Caltrans has most of those, don't they? Or the cities?
Yes, generally speaking, it's the cities and Caltrans. Caltrans utilizes raw water from us to
Right.
water the sides of the streets.
So how do they get the message?
They're a customer of ours, so we are communicating with them.
Okay,
And then same with the cities, same scenario.
This is also a state requirement, so, and Caltrans being a state agency would be.
they would not, okay.
So this says restrict.
Right, I was just gonna go there.
Okay. Go ahead, it was your turn.
I have the floor. Well, thank you,
You have the
Mr. President.
floor.
So that was my other comment about, imposes water-wise use practices by restricting the following. And then when you went on to talk about these, it was more of a prohibition. And I wondered if we should not, in fact, use the word prohibits as opposed to restricting. It's a little more, it's got a little more teeth in it.
I appreciate that.
I don't know what the right wording is, but it sort of felt a little squishy.
And I think again, the state wrote it that way purposefully. And
Oh, the state, okay, this comes from the state.
So these are all state, all down to
Yes,
letter
we
G?
utilized the language from the last drought, and these were all the recommendations by the state at that time. We took those, folded them into our own rules and regulations, and they remain in there today with this language. There are some of these that I agree with you that are absolutely no, you should not, like washing your car without
Well, right.
a nozzle on the end of your hose. That's a no-brainer.
Right.
But the watering of the sides of the street, that's like Caltrans, for instance, is using irrigation water to do so.
Mhm.
We're asking all others to reduce their irrigation to 3 days a week and, limit that watering by at least 20%. We're gonna ask Caltrans to do the same thing. So to say, no, just cut it off, would be pointing them out a little bit differently than the rest at this point in time. So I think the grayness in that one, it might be a little okay.
Okay, then my last question about the washing of cars, and I don't know how material this is in the greater scheme of how much water is saved, but I do note, I was in Nevada City yesterday and I took a photograph of their sign that they have out on the street, and their prohibition is you know, you can only wash cars if you use buckets. And, you know, and they have a more restrictive language in their drought program than we do. And I'm wondering, is that, you know, should we adopt their language or because it's, you know, it's not the same.
So overall percentage of mandatory reduction is identical between us and Nevada City. Using a bucket to wash your car is great suggestion. I think by saying you need to have a nozzle on the end of your hose, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're only using the water to rinse off your car. If you want to put it in a bucket instead, that's fine as well. But the point is, don't waste water.
No, I get the point, but it was just interesting. It just seemed a little more restrictive, and since they buy water from us, you know, which, have they begun to do that yet, Nevada City?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll bet they have.
Yeah.
It just seemed like we should be consistent.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're pretty close, right? Because their restrictions are the same.
Okay.
As far as.
It's a 20% reduction.
When you say the volume of water restriction is the same, the actual application is slightly
How you
different.
get there.
Yeah.
How you get to the end is slightly different, and whether we need to actually mirror together.
You know, I don't know either. I just brought it up because it's different.
So I appreciate it. Our contract with Nevada City actually says they will implement whatever we implement in our drought contingency plans. So whatever we implement, they have to implement as well. The fact that they may have different language but gets us to the same place, we're all good. They can have more restrictive, I appreciate that even more. So it doesn't have to be identical, but your point is well taken that the messaging should be very similar so that we don't confuse.
Yeah, it's like, oh, NID says I can wash my car as long as I have a hose, and Nevada City says, oh, I can only do it with a bucket. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like,
At some point, even if you wash it with a bucket, you gotta rinse it off, so.
Right.
Yeah, fill the bucket multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using a hose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, nozzle sounds like the deal to me.
Anyway, thank you.
yeah, I just wanted to talk
Messaging.
about the consistency of the messaging. Okay. Thank you.
Have you gotten to the treated water?
No.
No, we're not there yet.
That's my question too.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Continue.
moving on to the mandatory restrictions. For our treated water customers, basically, we're stating that all district treated water customers will be required to reduce water by 20%. Outdoor irrigation shall be limited to the following. Watering shall be limited to 3 days per week. Water in the morning before 10, and water in the evenings after 6. And under no circumstance shall customers irrigate in a manner that creates runoff. And then drought pricing out, drought contingency plan stage 2 levels will go into effect immediately and will remain until the drought emergency has been lifted by the board of directors. For our irrigation water customers.
A question?
Yes, okay.
So after 6 p.m. for watering, it seems like that should be later than 6, because 6, it's still hot.
Still very hot.
And if we wanted to try to tie in with power consumption, it should be after 11 for PG&E's,
So as I understand it, the peak power period is till 9, and then it reduces down rate after that.
does
And
it?
by
I thought
then
it was
it's
4 to
dark,
11.
so- But
Used
by
to
all
be-
means,
It
we.
used to be 6 o'clock, well, maybe that's on my commercial.
No, it's 5 to 9.
Yes, it is.
It's 4. I know it starts at 4, is peak consumption. But whatever it seems like it would be good to tie it into the peak consumption, get it out of the peak consumption period for PG&E, because this is going to be on automatic timers for most people.
Yes. So we can modify the wording as we go here before we adopt it. So if the board is amenable to changing that time, we'll be glad to do that. This language is in our rules and regs and our conservation plan, but that doesn't mean we have to abide by it in this resolution. We can adjust it for the current drought.
Okay. Well,
So-
that's just my opinion, so I concur.
Well, so your my thinking was you're talking about pumping water, unless it doesn't apply to pumping water. So how would the electricity thing
Well, that's true.
affect the water?
I think
People
at the
using
end of the day,
pressurized treated
you're not
water,
watering when it's
except,
No,
We
you're
are-
right. You're right
So-
about that. Yeah,
Yes.
I get the concept.
Yeah.
but-
but that is more relevant to ditch water.
It is, but I will say that we still have to pump the treated water to get it to our customers. So there is a level of this that NID is now pumping additional at 6 PM because
Okay.
the demand goes up,
Okay.
right? So there is a nexus to, if you wait till later in the
Well, that
day,
was
you
my,
also-
that was my next question. Are we subject to peak power?
Yes, we are.
At the pumping for
Yes,
this
we are.
treated water? So there you go. So
Mhm.
now I'm with you, okay?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now I'm
There
with
is
you.
a nexus.
There is a nexus, yeah.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Laura had a question or a
Okay,
comment?
my comment, on C, the drought pricing, isn't it as per the district schedule of rates and charges, Schedule 4E and 4FI? It's not the drought contingency pricing doesn't set the pricing, it refers you, the drought pricing is set in our schedule.
Yes, in schedule that determine the pricing, though it does say at the top of the pricing, stage 2.
Right,
So, but yes, your point is
yeah,
right.
but it says at stage 2 levels, and so you're calling out is drought pricing. So if you said instead, drought pricing at stage 2 levels for the district schedule of rates and charges, Schedule 4EI and 4FI will go into effect. And then they'll know where to find out how much
Mhm.
their stages are, how much they're gonna have to pay, because you go to the drought contingency plan, it doesn't.
Right, I agree. I had a interaction with a constituent yesterday, and they said they had gotten the phase 1, drought thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what drought pricing is, what does that mean? How much am I gonna pay or not pay? I don't know when this is gonna take effect. There's no date on it. There was some
Right.
frustration in the messaging.
Right.
And I said, well, just wait till tomorrow. There will be more
Right.
direction.
And I assume that Chip was gonna go through all that. I had called him and clarified the part about prorating the raw water. And I think that would be good to go through clarifying all of that too, because that's new
I think
to
it is
me. It's new to everybody.
prorated.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
to that point, on the treated water customers, the drought contingency plan pricing for stage 2 is essentially just about a 25% increase on the volumetric portion they use, only the volumetric portion.
Yeah, and see, so we need to say that somewhere.
Yeah.
Remains the same, and basically, so what that incentivizes is the less you use, the less you pay,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense for drought.
So I have one other question. Oh, Rich, am I jumping ahead? Sorry. So again, I took this picture of the Nevada City thing, and this also doesn't match up. They say limit watering to outdoor plants to 2 days a week, and we say 3 days a week.
That's stage 3.
No, I'm just saying, in our resolution,
Our resolution
we
says
say,
3. I read that, yeah.
yeah, we say 3 days a week. And in
So
theirs,
that's our corresponding to our stage 2.
They could be.
they can be more restrictive.
Yeah.
I understood, but I just, I wanted to also point that out, that they've got 2 days a week and we say 3 days a week, so, and that's under our treated water, right?
Different than Grass Valley?
Huh?
Are they different than Grass Valley?
I don't know, I don't think Grass Valley's independently done anything yet.
So, I guess the question, do we chase somebody?
Do we be more restrictive? It's not so much chasing, it's do we want to be more restrictive
Somebody-
and be consistent with,
So somebody's come out in our territory as a service territory customer with something, what you're saying is certainly a little more restrictive than what we're saying here, and the question, if I'm hearing you right, is in deliberation, do we want to go more restrictive?
do we want to make this consistent with what these agencies are doing? Or it's like, oh, well, if you're in NID territory, you can water 3 days a week, but if you're in the city of Nevada City, you only get 2 days a week. I mean, it's just, again, it's sort of an inconsistent messaging thing.
Well, our stage 3 is 2 days.
No, I understand, but we were doing a hybrid, right?
Right.
So that's,
I think that's a really interesting point, because the washing the car one I could just kind of go with. 'cause-
right.
But this one I think is more important. It's more water, and I think it would be confusing to people.
So I will just say that if you're shooting for a 20% reduction, 3 days a week, it's roughly 20%. 2 days a week, it's much more than that. That's why we came up with the levels.
Understood. So then, but I'm bringing it up to our board to say, here we have this
We could also.
entity you know, this,
You have the same argument that PCWA has no drought restriction.
Right.
well, understood, well, then move over there.
They're-
But, you know, they've got more water than we do.
They're also in our service area.
Right.
That's my only point, is that
Yeah,
Same
we share
situation.
multiple service areas with multiple agencies, but
Right.
we don't all have the same message.
And just like federal, state, and county, you can add more restrictions as you go down the ladder if you want to.
no, I
so.
understand, all I wanted to do was point it out, I just sent this to you, Greg, so that you have it, so that you have it.
Rich?
Yes, we do what we do. I don't see any rain dance requirements in here.
Did you get the video out?
No.
No?
So I want to talk about a conversation I had yesterday with a friend who irrigates every day for 20 minutes. And I said, well, you're going to have to go every other day, 3 days a week, but just go to that subsoil a little more so you can keep it moist. He wasn't irrigating enough. He was afraid that everything was going to go dry. So it's not going to save a lot of water if you go 3 days a week and he goes to 40 minutes a day, but he'll have better off. The other aspect is don't cut your lawns too short. Keep them high, keep them 5 inches. And that will save actually a lot of lawns and a lot of water, believe it or not.
We're brown it out, we're gonna brown it out front and
Yeah, I know,
try to.
brown is the new green, that's what I saw somewhere on our.
So I wonder, it's not gonna be part of our resolution, but maybe it could be in a mailing, keep your lawns higher, brown them out. These are remedies to save water.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay. Other
Did we
questions
decide
on
to change the schedule instead of from,
that? We did not. So what's the board's prerogative? We want to limit that down to 2 or keep it with the 3 days per week?
I wonder if you could say, like, when we have our 3-day per week watering, just have a parentheses, Nevada City residents, are requested to irrigate 2 days per week.
Well, keep in mind, we're going to be doing direct mailing to our own customer base only.
Mm-hmm.
But the point about the community notification, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of mixed messaging going on.
Yeah, there
You're
is.
absolutely right. But our goal is to target our direct customers and with
Yeah.
direct mailings and billing inserts. However, if you would like the message different, we can modify it.
Did you want to chime in?
Looked like Karen had something more to say.
No, I don't. I guess,
I didn't
Leave
know
it
that
be,
you do
but-
that when they don't have the water,
Because they're
not-
buying it from us, I would imagine. So they really want to restrict the use, which equals restrict the amount of money they're spending. I mean, I haven't talked to them about this,
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
So I talked to friends in Nevada City, they have already gone through their yard with the landscaper. We can cut back here, we can cut here, we can go, this shrub, you only have to irrigate once a week. They're gonna have to identify certain trees, might have to be once a week, but longer periods. So people need to go and identify what is more drought resistant, hardy, versus the ones that aren't. And maybe they have to make changes.
And that's a good point, Ricky, that if they're not part of if they're solely delivered water and their billing comes from that city, I don't see the problem having it different. That's the same, like you said, it's the same
that's
in
true.
Placer County.
Yeah,
They have no restrictions.
and I concur.
It gets a little tough down in Placer County where, there's a lot of folks down there that are neighbors to PCWA customers, and there's.
Right.
We're trying to say conserve, and across the street, oh, we're all good.
All good.
So,
yeah.
Maybe we could buy some water from them, huh? How about this idea?
I also think that if we're not getting the conservation we need, this is one of those things we absolutely come back and change.
Right.
And we
Okay,
can.
that makes sense.
We look at
I
August 1st.
We're gonna watch it in real
Watch,
time. And
see.
if we're not getting the conservation we need and those carryover targets are in jeopardy, we're coming right back to you. I hope we don't go there, but.
Good plan.
And conservation is starting to pick up, so.
People are finally hearing.
we'll focus on the positive for now.
And the municipalities, they have authority doing whatever, you know, if they want to be more restrictive, great.
Right.
We're covering a large territory.
Right.
We have a lot of constituents in different levels, and so we just need to make it effective for us, and like Chip says, you know, a few days is a 20% reduction in our calculation. If we want to bring it back later and we're not getting there, we can always up it.
Yeah, we have to give people an opportunity to respond.
Okay, and then lastly, Chip, you know, this whole thing about the drought pricing will go into effect immediately. Can we give a date? Because what does immediately mean, actually? Does it mean when we get our materials done and we send it out and when they receive it?
No, it will be effective the date of the adoption of this resolution.
Okay,
Just say July
so
1st.
maybe what we would say immediately, comma, July 1st, 2021. And then you know, I think what Laura said about referencing something, because this feedback I've gotten is like, what does that even mean, and where do I go find it? And I have to go dig through all these documents, and how does that impact me
I mean,
personally?
the pricing structure.
Yeah, the pricing structure, is to somehow reference the pricing structure for folks so that they understand what that means.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and I put that in my notes, so we'll
Okay,
modify the
great.
language to say, we haven't perfected it yet, but basically, drought pricing at drought contingency plan, stage 2 levels, per the district schedule of fees for, I gotta look up and make sure.
4E and
the right one, 4E.
Right.
Yeah, for EI and-
Will go into effect immediately July 1st, and will
Okay.
remain.
It just makes it a little more defined.
Yeah, I get it.
Specific, yeah.
Thank you.
It's good.
Where did the board land on the 6 PM discussion?
We didn't.
We didn't.
I think 9 PM is best.
I-
It's still hot at 6 PM, at least down in my neck of the woods.
It is still really hot here, too, at 16.
And it's not always best to carry water throughout the night because you get mold. It's always better in the morning.
We have a consensus,
Well, I think it should be later than 6.
so
I like putting it with powers,
it does
when
match
the,
with PG&E's
yeah.
measures, that's for sure.
I concur with 9.
We concur.
9 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, moving into irrigation water customers. All irrigation water customers are strongly encouraged to implement irrigation efficiency practices. Outdoor irrigation of landscape shall be limited to the following, and this matches what we're asking our treated water customers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Watering shall be limited to 3 days per week. We will adjust this time frame that it will be 10 a.m. and after 9 p.m.
Good.
And no irrigating in a manner that causes runoff. Okay, and then, item C, no new or increased irrigation sales will be permitted until the drought emergency has been lifted by the board of directors. We talked about that before. I am proposing to add a new, item D, basically that says no fall water sales. We already talked about this.
Yes, we did.
It was
Yes.
meant to be captured in item
Yes.
C, but it doesn't capture it specifically enough. So I would like to add a new item D. I think we have a version of this redlined and ready to go for you.
Mm-hmm.
We can continue to tweak, but
I agree.
Throw that in
What
there.
did you say, fall and winter?
No fall.
water sales
No fall water sales.
Fall.
No fall.
Period.
available?
And is it clear?
Our rules and regulations is already in there, so we'll reference that.
And that- Oh, and D, winter water sales will be limited to existing customers.
So then the next line would be, D would become E, it would be winter water sales will be limited to existing customers at existing purchase volumes. Customers who request a reduction or who voluntarily forego water delivery during the 2021 irrigation season will not lose their priority of service once the drought emergency has been lifted by the board. And then drought pricing at drought contingency plan stage 2 levels, and then we will add the schedule in here
Good.
again.
Okay.
Just to be specific, will go into effect immediately July 1st, and will remain in effect until the drought emergency has been lifted by the board of directors.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Increases for summer water will be prorated from July 1st through the end of irrigation season on October 14th. And,
That line about volumetric is is not in here either.
no, it would be on the schedule. So if we reference the schedule
Oh, reference the
in this,
schedule,
they'll look it up and they'll be able to see, okay, the
Okay.
drought pricing only involves the volumetric. My base fee will remain the same.
Could we just highlight that in the overall, I don't know what number, the one with the A through H, just note that volumetric, it would, physically, it would only impact volumetric pricing.
Once we reference it in the now for it be reserved or resolved, if we reference the schedule, then it's already built in.
They'd have to go to the schedule to know that, rather than just.
So
Let us wordsmith that, I think we can.
I think I'd like to include it in F, what we just described, and it could almost be an additional sentence, something that says, pricing increases will only be based on, will only,
Volumetric.
Yeah,
involve volume.
There you go.
That was
affecting
my
volumetric
suggestion
pricing
in
or
letter
something.
F, yes.
Good.
just so it's clear.
I agree.
People know that, just reading it.
Since we're, if I can briefly talk about process here. Since we're wordsmithing this, what I would propose, obviously we'll go through this, hear your input, make changes, and then allow staff to go into the other room on a recess, make the changes, that we project them
Go over 'em.
in red line for the public, for the board. We're good, then we go to public hearing.
Perfect.
Great,
Okay.
perfect.
I like
I
that.
like it.
Okay.
Director Dranson.
Chip, on winter water sales, I would like to see some drought stage on those if water's coming out of storage. Or if it's coming out of storage, then I'd like to see some reduction on winter water, that's 40,000.
So he's pointed out they're mostly half inch and mostly in a
Yeah.
house, right?
We're beginning to touch on the public health and safety supply for in-home use. I hear what you're saying.
But not all of them.
The pricing, drought pricing will remain in effect for these folks even into the winter months. So there is that, but the volumetric is, again, not mandatory. So is that what I'm hearing, is that you want to see a mandatory reduction of winter waters?
I'd like to see it.
I
I'm
agree.
not sure it could be done. That's all I
You
can
have
see
to
it.
reorifice all the boxes
And most of them, you said were 1 inch and ½ inch.
we don't have a volume to reduce them down to because they're already so small, the majority of them.
Aren't they already encompassed into number A, number B, encouraged to implement irrigation? See,
yes.
they're already an irrigation customer, encouraged to engage in efficiencies.
But why is it then but you're saying they're using it conjunctive use, they're using it for domestic purposes?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, then, do we need to see audits or?
Non-potable domestic use, so it's toilets and showers.
Right.
I mean, we could put something in there with showers, that's probably the most.
That was gonna be my point. In '77, there was a lot of talk about what you can do in your house, like taking a Navy shower, like putting a brick in your toilet, and all these little things you could do. In my case, I have an upstairs house. It takes me a long time to get the hot water up there. Okay, what am I doing? All this water's going down the sink right now. Okay, now I'm getting smart about that, right?
Those on-demand,
You
You can say that's treated water as well.
But that's, yeah, right.
Right,
and we're,
So it's
right.
still house water.
I agree, and I think that's where it's our opportunity and our messages and our conservation mailings to suggest all of those water conservation measures and how to get to this
Okay.
20% we're asking.
In the,
yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that's 40,000 acre feet. And if we only recharged 40,000 acre feet this past winter,
Yeah, we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
It's essentially not, 40,000 acre feet is what we divert, but it's not what our customers use. We divert it and then put it right back into the creek. So, if we get rains, it's not coming from storage in winter. So
We're all good.
there's some different scenarios there that we'd have to,
so I think you said though, if we're taking it out of storage, right?
Yeah,
That'd be where the rubber would meet the road.
so that would be very difficult to, tell you when that is at the time, especially with curtailments in place, correct?
What percentage of that winter water is going to non-domestic purposes?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go through all the accounts and check.
Is it like
I would say,
3%, 5%?
no, a larger majority of it, there's not a lot of winter water customers, and a larger majority of it is a very small half miner's inch, or some remaining quarter inch customers. And really, again, it is just for source of supply for flushing toilets, showering,
Right.
those kinds of things. It's not necessarily for watering crops or anything like that. There are some stock water customers in the winter. We do have a handful of those, but it's not a lot.
Okay.
Director Peters?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments on this one, and this one, my first comment applies throughout the document. I want to put it on the table and talk to people about. It says, A, all district, it says, we've kind of morphed in this particular document, calling it irrigation water versus raw water versus ag water, right? Now we're getting all these different names for what is that water. And I think that because I would propose that we just search and replace wherever we call it irrigation water, we call it raw water, because that's what I mean, we do call it ag water, but I would propose that we call it raw water and stick to one term, because they're saying, well, is irrigation water different than ag water, is it different than raw water? I don't know why we've changed the name of it, and so this is just for consistency that I think we should call it raw water. I want to feel of the rest of the board on that.
Sounds reasonable.
Does sound reasonable to me, yeah, because
Yeah.
we're talking about the public here.
One term, let's be consistent.
Who don't necessarily have.
We don't have
The ag
irrigation.
water management plan, we got the proven water management plan. We need to
Focus on raw water, and that encompasses ag as well as rural states. It encompasses
All uses.
all uses of water.
Untreated water.
Untreated water. We could
Yeah.
call it untreated water, but we don't call it untreated water anymore. So we have historically called it raw water. So I think throughout the document, that's one of my general comments throughout the document, is replacing, not calling it irrigation water, calling it raw water.
That's fine with me.
Is that okay with that?
Fine with me, I think it makes sense to be consistent. Because the one thing I keep hearing is it's confusing.
Yeah.
You know, all of these, it's like,
Jumbled
like
terms.
if we can just simplify it,
Yeah,
it's confusing for folks, so.
Right.
all encompassing.
Yes.
Okay, I think we have a consensus.
Got it, yep.
Okay.
And then my other thing is, on number F, I think we should insert, the very last sentence, increases for summer water will be prorated. I think we should say increases for 2021 summer water, because if this, hope it doesn't, but should it go to 2022, they'd say, well, we don't have to have the increase until July 1st.
Well, it says
Just-
July.
Well, wait a minute.
It says July 1st, 2021, October.
Okay, so it
You have the
increases for
date.
2021 summer water,
Through the end of the season on
Okay, and it-
October 14th.
Yeah.
but it's 2021, and so now what if we're in 2022? Does that mean it doesn't apply anymore?
I think we'll be doing.
It'll be a different
There
water
Or we do
year.
another
It's
resolution
another
next year?
different water season.
Next year, we'd have a.
Oh, we'd have to do a whole thing all over
System.
again? Okay, good, that's.
Remember, we may be changing all the orifices.
All be dependent on what kind of winter we get.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Director Johansson?
So, we don't have anything about auditing, which I think we're working on. How is the water being applied and used? We're getting a little more idea how people are using their water.
In what regard?
Well,
Johansson?
let's take water trucks.
Yeah.
Half of them are probably being used for refilling for domestic use.
Yeah.
Maybe the other half is not.
Yeah, so in that regard, you're absolutely right. We have changed our application to not only include a location of use, but purpose of use. So what are you using the water for? So yes.
And that is required from the water tender, the driver?
Yes.
Or from,
When they come into the district to get a water meter from us, they have to fill out that application and give us that information.
so a request is getting difficult because some operators have more trucks than others, and half of them have meters, and half of them don't. But always when they get asked, where's your permit, where's the meter? Oh, it's in the other truck.
Yeah.
It's happening, yeah. And then you go see that truck and, oh, it's in the other truck. So the request is, I don't know if it really applies here, but it is for saving water and accountability of that water. Can the smaller guys, the water buffalo guys, give up their meters to the bigger guys, so every truck, every big water tender will have a meter, and the water buffalo, who just 500 gallons or whatever, landscaping or fire protection, is on a sheet, on a tally sheet. With that, I think it should be emphasized, no out-of-district sales with the water tenders.
We don't allow out-of-district.
But they are.
We don't allow it.
We don't allow it, but
We
they
don't
are.
allow it, we can't
I
police
think-
it, I think.
Under this resolution, can we put something real strong in there?
We can reference the district's existing rule. We'll have to think about where best to put that, but we can reference the district's existing rule. We have in here already provisions about enforcement. So if we happen to, and I can't think of a hypothetical where we would know this, but if we know that there's one of these tenders is coming in district, pulling water, and then taking it out of district in violation of our rule, we will have enforcement mechanism to deal with that.
Or an in-district tender going out of district?
Yes, or theft, or
going to a non-qualifying use.
well, you don't have, I mean, the only non-qualifying
I
use.
just stepped into it, but that's all right.
Yeah. Help me out here, Chip. The non-qualifying use is wasted or unreasonable use. We don't say, for example, that a certain crop is okay, but that other crop is not. Correct?
Correct.
But the state does. And that's where we put some responsibility back onto the state.
State says there's an unqualified use
Yeah,
beyond the waste and unreasonable,
right.
They do?
a crop.
An industrial use.
Okay.
That's how I want to go. I just brought it up, that's it.
So Director Johansson, so we hadn't got here yet, but as Dustin had mentioned, we're coming up with an enforcement action through this resolution that we'll be bringing back to this board. Are you okay with us including that in the enforcement portion that we developed? That
Absolutely,
we can then
yeah,
come down on those folks?
yeah.
Okay.
So on that subject, we have to have a different one or a special one for?
We have one. We have one in
Resolution?
current rules and regulations. It's rather weak.
Okay,
So this one, I think, will be a little more robust.
'cause that was a question I had about when I read that line.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Director Hull?
On Rich's comment about, you said no out-of-district sales, and then you kind of qualified it a bit, and I wondered, I realize we have some important contracts, you know, for serving water to Nevada City and Grass Valley. But beyond that, I thought we had agreed that we would have no out-of-district sales.
That's correct.
So it seems like we ought to have state that, I mean, even for just public perception, that there are no out-of-district sales with those exceptions of Nevada City and Grass Valley
Yeah, that's fine.
for human consumption. So that, it just seems like that's a really important statement. Some people perceive that we may be selling water out of district like PCWA has chosen to do.
And the reference is that our fire hydrants, they do such a good job of putting pressure on our fire hydrants. Guys come here to fill up, because they can fill up in half the time, or quarter the time, or 1/10 the time, and they take it out of district.
How big of a problem? You've brought that up so many times. I'm wondering, is that 5, or is that 2, or is that 100? I mean, what is it that,
Well,
I'm trying to
I
think.
I didn't think it was huge until I got a phone call this morning. And I think it's a lot larger than we know. I think that maybe half our water is going to, out of district or inappropriate use.
Half our water?
Half
Half the water tenders.
Half the water tenders, not half our water.
Oh. And so I wonder what that
What do you
amounts
mean by
to.
water
do you
tender?
mean by
I mean,
that?
what does
Water
that
trucks,
mean?
water
mean?
trucks. What?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Half of the
tender.
water tender.
Half of the water trucks that are,
The water
For
tender means
swimming
water
pool
truck.
or whatever.
potable water trucks that deliver water to people.
Don't we monitor those? I mean,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Well, we try.
but we don't ask them where they go, we.
Yes,
Oh, you do?
we do.
they do on the
Come
application.
in, they fill out an application, they let us know where they're going to use the water, and
I
we've
think
added what they're going to use it for, and they attest to that. We give them the meter, and they go on their way.
But
You
not
give
all
them the
have
meter,
meters.
what does that mean?
And it's kind of
A meter to the hydrant when they fill.
Well, why don't we just say they can't have that then?
Well, it sounds like, Director Johansson, if I understand what you're alluding to, is that every water tender that comes to the district that is able to take water from an NID facility legally has to come to our office, attest, just like Chip says, where they're gonna get the water, what they're gonna use it for, and where they're gonna deliver it. Then they leave this building, and they go to that location. We're not following them. I mean, I think is that what you're alluding to? And then they drive somewhere else, outside of the district?
or for another use. That
I'm not sure how this really can put bounds around that. We already have it in our systems that they attest to using the water in the district.
I think this is where, again, where it comes into enforcement. If we
Yeah.
catch them and they're doing it illegally, then we go into our enforcement arm and we put that clamp on them. But beyond that, we're not, as Greg mentioned, we're not following these guys around. We do have distribution operators, we have a valve crew that's driving around and checking on all these when we run into them. So,
How much water?
How many permits are there? I mean, how many do we
I
have?
don't know off the top of my head. I do know that the demand gets very high in drought years like this. We just ordered 10 more meters because we were running out of meters. I can get you some more specific numbers, but in the grand scheme of things, this is treated water. It's being pulled from our treated water systems. Our treated water use is 10% of our roughly 150,000 acre feet we use every year. So it's a fairly small number, but hey, it's a drought. We want to save every drop.
It becomes a cost benefit thing, you know, I don't disagree, you know, but we can't be chasing
Water trucks
We don't
down
have.
Highway 20,
we
to
don't-
see where they go.
Enforcement mechanism, and people can call in if they see something that's awkward.
Yeah.
We can dispatch folks right to a location and pull up right behind the person and say, hey, can we take a look at where are you going, right?
Yeah, where's your permit?
Where's your
Does it
permit?
seem like it's happening more out in Division 5 than anywhere else? Where these
I asked him
places
that
are?
question too, and then I had a contact, inquiry about that too, down in, Jones Bar area. Seeing a lot of water trucks, wondering about this situation.
It's a lot bigger in Division 5 and the western end of Division 1.
Yeah.
Well, the community should know that we do have dispatch operators on call, and they're always can call the number if there's something that's looking awkward, and we can go see if we can find that individual and see what they're doing and check their permit number. And I'm sure if we're gonna follow them as they drive out the way, but we have
Well, we can note the time, the date,
the ability
who they were,
That's right.
and see if they reported it to customer service.
Yeah, and the license plate on it. That's on that.
If they have them. Most of these trucks are not carrying plates.
Well, you wouldn't give a permit
Well, CHP might be.
to someone who doesn't have a license.
Last several have no license plates on.
Well, that sounds very odd.
Yeah.
Sounds like a,
Well,
Sheriff or CHP might be interested.
But that's why it's coming up.
probably breaking the law anyway.
Right.
You think?
But there's no way.
But you wouldn't give the water to somebody without a license plate, would you?
Licenses. I'll have to see if that.
Can we put meters on the hydrants?
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be way.
Oh, they get stolen.
Yeah.
So this is a good topic for another
later day.
Discussion, yes.
We have
Yes.
had some plans, so one thing I ought to expand upon, just real quick, is that when somebody comes in with a request for one of these, we give them an application, we also give them a map of the available hydrants. And we have now, most recently, been highlighting only a few hydrants. In the past, we used to be very lenient, say, oh, here's a number of hydrants you can pull from. We're gonna pull that back in and say, no, it's only these 5, because it will be much easier for us to police who's legitimate if they're at one of those 5 versus, hey, this is not a legitimate fire hydrant that we authorized, now we know you're illegally taking. So we're putting some of these things in action right now to try to better get a handle on it and better police it, but it's gonna need some more help in the future.
Yeah.
We'll work on it. But we had mentioned at one point in time, just designated filling stations that are not on a hydrant at all.
Yeah.
They're on a card lock system.
That'd be even better.
Unfortunately, the only way that works is to then lock all of the hydrants.
Yes,
Which
right.
then becomes a whole public health and safety issue during a fire, where the fire department's now delayed trying to get a log off of a hydrant. So it's an involved discussion, one we can have at another time, but point well taken.
So moving on, I have a small comment on E. So it says, will not lose their priority of service, and my suggestion is that we say, will maintain their priority of service. Very
Yes,
small
better.
change, but I just,
Where are you looking, Karen?
On page 6,
E, yeah,
page 6,
6E.
item E.
6E.
Yeah, I like that too, because that's always been a fear that people express.
Exactly,
And this is not clear, but your suggestion makes it more clear.
yeah.
Great.
Okay. Other comments, concerns, questions?
I have general from before, I was waiting to the end, but,
Okay.
so are we ready to go back to the beginning? I mean, I just have a few just general comments. First one, this one's kind of pedestrian. It says fire protection and so number one, whereas provide water for residential, commercial, industrial. You know, these are the beneficial uses of the water. And it says fire protection and prevention purposes. And I looked in the basin plan, I looked in the water code and for water rights, and I couldn't see that it was for both, for fire protection, but I didn't see prevention, and I don't know what we mean by prevention purposes. And is that really truly a bona fide beneficial use for
Sensible green space.
but is that a beneficial use of water? I don't know if it, I couldn't find it, but
So this is I suspect this is a remnant of our 14 and 15, because this is not new language.
Are we talking about preventing fires here?
Fire prevention, yes.
Okay.
Prevention.
Fire protection, I can see I can see the fire
I
protection
don't say we
being
prevent a fire
a
by
beneficial
having.
use, but prevention purposes, because I've talked to people in my area, and they water the bejeepers out of everything. They have 10 acres of lawn, and I say, well, what's that about? Well, I'm doing fire
Oh, so
prevention.
I see where this is going.
And I'm going, well, wait a minute, that's fine and good, but as long as we say for preventive purposes, every single person that has lush green lawn is gonna say that. And so I'm thinking, and I couldn't find it in the basin, and that's why I'm asking you, maybe there's somewhere I don't know, but I know fire protection, because that's hydrants. But prevention, I'm not sure.
To me, we can strike that if that's the prerogative of the board.
I'm not in favor of striking it.
You're not in
It's
favor.
we have fire protection already, but not
No, I know, but
prevention.
I'm irrigating land for fire protection.
Yeah, and so are my
I-
neighbors, and they're using 6 inches of water a year, and they're
Well, I'm
irrigating
gonna cut
the
back, I'm gonna
jeepers out of
keep,
it.
I'm not gonna mow it, I'm gonna keep
Well,
it.
not
green enough so it
everyone's
doesn't
you,
catch
right?
fire.
Everyone's going,
But
no,
that's where an audit would come in, and how they actually be in beneficial use of the water.
and they're saying it's a beneficial use. We're
Okay,
saying
so
it's a beneficial
I'll give you an
use.
example. So the 1 year before the 49er fire, a friend of mine who has a wood shake house, wood everywhere, upslope from Deer Creek, said, hey, how can we make this more fire protected, you know? He had 1 miner's inch, and it's gravity fed, so he planted clover below the house. And when the 49er fire went in there, and he and I were running out of his place, there was 6 or 7 air attack bombers encircling to drop, and the flames were 50 to 100 feet up. And when they hit that green zone, boom, just knocked the fire right out and saved his house and the house above it. So
But the
there
picture
is
of
something to say, but now, to your point, Laura, I agree. You've got 10 acres of lawn.
Yeah,
Right.
He did it with about 1 acre.
Right.
Okay, and 1 miner's inch on 10 acres. So that might be excessive. So I think it's the,
protection, the protection, prevention purposes, that's so subjective.
but we could not put that fire out just with water protection.
We
It
still,
has to be prevention.
Fire protection.
keep in mind, we still have the watering 3 days per week limit, which, if somebody came in and said, oh, I'm watering excessively because I'm relying on this language here, we would say, no, we've got a more specific limitation that limits you to 3 days per week. We've got this hour limitation. So
Yeah.
I hear you saying there's a loophole here.
Yeah, and it's, same with another, we keep
But
protection and prevention, and then another place, we say, prevention and suppression. So one place we call it fire protection and prevention, and then page 3, the bottom, we say it's for fire prevention and suppression.
Yeah.
And so, what is it?
All of those, yeah.
That's all.
My personal view, I haven't, I probably haven't looked at this since 2014, because I'm pretty sure that language is carryover from then.
Yeah, because
But to me, those are minute differences in all beneficial uses. Protection and prevention is pre-fire, suppression is during an event. It's beneficial use. But yes, we can, I'm open to whatever the prerogative of the board is if we want to.
I couldn't find it as a beneficial use.
Well, so are you saying then it's a waste and unreasonable use to have water be applied as fire protection or fire
No.
prevention?
No.
Prevention?
I just think we should be consistent. I'm just back to being consistent. I think we should be consistent and make sure, but believe me, people are going to say I'm doing fire prevention and I'm going to keep my lush grass because I need it for fire protection. And then it's going to be harder to get our 20% reduction.
Couldn't they say, under the auspices of fire protection, that they're still, I mean, you're protecting your property against fire? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind making the change, but I don't think it's gonna be what motivates or unmotivates people's use of the water, and I don't think they'll point to this and say, oh, you use that word. But to me, fire protection enables people to do what the person did with Rich's example of plant clover, and that protected their property from a fire.
Look, I think this goes into the fact, in my opinion, that we have such a broad application of our water, right? We have the second largest irrigation district in the state. We have a number of residential homes that use it for protection and prevention within the house itself and suppression. That is an absolute beneficial use of emergency fire sprinklers in new buildings. That is absolutely, it covers it in here.
Yeah, fire protection.
Protection and suppression. Now, if we talk about wildfire and large grassland fires with 100-foot flames coming up and taking out 15, 30 acres at a swath, then, sometimes the water cannot be used, right? The pressure isn't there. It's gone. It's burnt up. So I don't know if it's semantics so much as...
I just want a consistency. It's stated 2 different places and it's stated differently in each place.
So I'll propose this. To me, protection and prevention is pretty close to being the same.
Yeah.
So what if we struck prevention in the first paragraph there and just said fire suppression, or fire protection and suppression purposes?
Fire protection.
Yeah, and then it's consistent with the second one. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Okay.
I think prevention is actually more important.
suppression.
See that?
Fire prevention and protection. No,
Prevention and suppression.
Prevention and suppression.
Using suppression and
Prevention and suppression.
not protection.
Yeah. Prevention and suppression. I'm all right with that.
Okay.
As long as it's consistent. I'm mostly looking for consistency. Let's see, so on top of the page 2, the whereas, the very last sentence, I'm not quite sure what benefit this very last part with it. So it says, it's all one sentence. The Governor Newsom issued the emergency proclamation stating that much of the West is experiencing severe to exceptional drought. California is in the second consecutive year of dry conditions. And drought conditions vary across the state. I think we should just put a period there. I don't know what this final, and some watersheds are extremely dry and are facing substantial water supply and ecosystem challenges. I don't know that this last starting and some watersheds, that's vague, and I don't know what it has to do with that.
I think it's true. I think it's a true statement.
Yeah, so let me maybe elaborate here, because this is my language, so I can speak more definitive about this. So the April 21, 2021 proclamation only declared drought emergency in 2 counties, Sonoma and Mendocino. And then it had a whole bunch of directives as to state agencies to start taking actions concerning drought. So the reason to me this is significant is that it's consistent with our drought experience. We declared surplus in March because we had a kind of a razor-thin determination. Then we got kind of progressively dry. We're sensing drought. Okay, in April, let's pull the trigger on a voluntary reduction. Then things continue to get worse, and now we're to the point where we need to impose mandatory. The state had to do the exact same thing. So I'm kind of laying a theme here that this is a pattern of progression where everyone got surprised by the lack of runoff, primarily, lack of snowmelt runoff. So that's kind of what I'm trying to tease out. But if you want to end the quote in the sentence after the word state, I think is what you said, that's fine with me. I don't think the rest of it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it seems, because it says, well, some areas, some watersheds, well, what water? It just begs more questions, and well, what's that got, are we talking about Imperial Valley, or, are we talking about Nevada County? Because we do state that Nevada and Placer County are
Later on, yeah, the May 10th.
Proclamation, right? I don't know.
I do like the progression that you described, Dustin. It does seem that we might flip the first whereas with the second whereas, because then we would start with March 10th condition, then we would go to April 21st, and from there it kind of goes from a linear, yeah. I think that whole section on the April 21st is about a broader look at the issue of drought, and to me, the whole paragraph is relevant because the other part could be, I think, beg a lot of questions too. Yeah. Much of the West. Well, what part of the West?
And why is it relevant to this? But I'm okay with it, but I like it putting it in the right position. That's the first thing I read, and that's like, well.
Okay.
But I think it's pretty powerful to say, look, this is a big issue across a big area, not just our district. So.
Well, the problem I have with it is PCWA has not declared a drought.
You can't control.
And they're being, yeah,
so
because they bought a bunch of water early on.
They have a different system.
I know. But
right.
To say, but yeah, if you flip it, I'm not really, that's fine. Let's see. Okay, and then on the top of page 3, whereas a result of concurrent emergency drought prevailing within the district boundaries are based on, what I would, rather than say being approximately 72% of the April 1st, because that's going backwards, I would just say based on a rapid depletion of snowpack in the watershed. Because being approximately 72% on the April 1st average. Okay, so they say, well, 72%, that's not bad. People would say, well, 72% on April 1st, that seems pretty good. So to highlight that we had 72% on April 1st, but now we're in the dire straits now, if you just say based on rapid depletion of snowpack in the watershed, the district forecast this is what, and just drop that being approximately 72% of the April 1st average. They're saying if you got 72%, people say, do you really have a drought problem?
Yeah. Let me try to expand on that as intent. 72% of April 1 snowpack is pretty good.
Yeah.
The sudden unexpected event giving rise to emergency is not the level of snowpack, it's the lack of runoff from snowpack.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At a 72% runoff, we should have expected an efficiency around 50% of that to end up in our reservoirs. And I don't know the numbers, Chip, but we're probably in the 20% efficiency. So the snowpack was pretty good, it was like a false hope. We were looking at the snowpack, looks pretty good, but then it never showed up in any storage reservoirs throughout the state. So that, and we try to get into this later, but that is the sudden and unexpected event that really gave rise to, we really need to revisit this and start enhancing the conservation measures.
So if we just said, based on the rapid depletion of snowpack in the district's watershed, the district forecasted its water supplies without undertaking drought reduction, blah, 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 dropped unacceptably low levels.
I think maybe based on the lack of runoff from the snowpack.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think it puts it into context, because really, as we've said, 72% doesn't really have meaning, because it doesn't have the context of the ground soaking up 50% of it, or 80%. So I think that's fine. I think that language makes it sound dramatic.
More dramatic.
Yeah.
It's due to the rapid depletion, no matter where it went, it was evaporated, it didn't.
Yeah.
It just didn't
Yeah, maybe,
go down.
yeah, more something people can relate to.
I would think so. It's just more plain English, I think, because this goes, well, 70, it just, I don't know.
Yeah, we got into, so I'm back on page 2. The beginning at the third whereas from the bottom. The governor's May 10th proclamation observed a historic and unanticipated depletion of the snowpack.
Yeah.
And then the next whereas, we experienced the same thing. Then we did, then our 2021-11 resolution requesting the voluntary measures did not see the results needed. And then we come to the whereas at the top of page 3 that you were commenting about, Director Peters. And based on the lack of runoff, I would say something like lack of runoff,
From the snowpack.
lack of,
I like the way that you set the chronology, so that it's all in context. Because I just was, like, 3 hours ago, asked the same question. Well, I thought we had this great snowpack. I don't understand.
Right. Yeah, 'cause we're already May 10th, and we're jumping back to April 1st.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
It just hung me up.
okay.
Joe Hanson.
So, sounds good. All right. So we're asking for a 10% reduction, voluntary 10% reduction on 2013. I thought we had already achieved that.
On treated water?
Everybody had already adjusted their usage, and we were down,
What are you talking about?
You may be mixing two things.
I am,
We've got the 20% by 2020,
yeah,
that's from 2009 legislation. We've met that, yes, but that was a different baseline from which to measure the 20%. So that was 2009 legislation. Then the 2012 through 2016 drought comes, they throw the 2009 legislation out the window and say the new baseline is 20% from 2013.
right, and we met that.
We did during that drought, but just this year we've fallen back.
Our usage went back up. I thought last year.
Really went back up in April.
It was still under.
That last slide, that last slide that Chip had, treated water year-to-date, we're only at 1%.
And that's based on 2013.
Yeah, so,
Last year.
and this is a good question, and one that I think is missing in this resolution, is that we asked for a 20% mandatory reduction. I believe the language should have an adder on it that says as compared to your 2020 usage.
Exactly.
What are you
Very
talking
good.
about?
Yes.
Cite the paragraph.
2013 usage or 2020? Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
people have changed their watering patterns in
Yeah.
2013,
yeah,
and so to ask them to conserve based on a 2013 model, water usage was very different back then.
okay.
Most of them don't even own their same houses since 2016.
And so asking them to conserve 20%, we need to give them what time frame we're comparing. to.
Right, exactly.
My suggestion
What is
would
your
be-
baseline?
Would be 2020, because that's the most.
I think that's very important. I also had a comment like
What
that.
paragraph is that?
That would be in the page 5, it'll be it further resolved, A.
All district treated water customers will
Oh,
be
okay.
required to reduce water usage by 20% as compared to their 2020 usage, something.
Right, I think that's good.
Okay.
It helps to make it clear.
Okay. And then I have another question. So I'm back on page 3, I'm under 1, 2, third whereas down. It says that, whereas persistent drought conditions have negatively impacted and continue to impact and threaten the district's powerhouses. how does it threaten the powerhouses? I know it threatens our ability
The
to
production.
generate power, but how does it threaten the powerhouses?
Drought conditions continue to build on tree mortality affecting wildfire activity. That's how I would read that.
It says it threatens the powerhouses that generate power, that generate hydroelectric power.
The powerhouses generally are within a mountainous terrain, right? With
So you're
I'm not
talking
sure how that was written, but in my quick assumption, drought conditions have negatively impacted and continue and threaten powerhouses as well as other district facilities, but it's just an element within what it is.
How does a drought condition threaten the facility?
Dead and dying trees, equating to greater propensity for larger wildfires, perhaps, as an example.
This is really one of those where remember, you need to have findings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you make a determination here, you need to have findings, and the whereas clauses are
The findings.
building that
Support
case.
findings,
Right.
yeah.
And when you're declaring an emergency, impacts and threats, those are kind of key words that you want to tease out and say, yes, we're being impacted, we're being threatened. Our facilities are being threatened. Our powerhouses, our recreational facilities. So could we do a better job of describing it? Perhaps, but I think we need to have some of those key words in there.
Yeah, no, okay, so what if we say, drought conditions and resulting increase in fire,
Increase.
I think you could do it, Laura, by adding just the word, our powerhouses and power production.
it does, well, they already say power production in another
They do?
one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, then I'm actually okay with it, because I get the powerhouse thing. You have a fire up there at Dutch Flat and it burns
out the
everything
fire
down, and it's,
so we don't
Threatening
mention
our
dead and dying
powerhouse.
trees anywhere in here.
What's that?
Maybe we should mention dead and dying trees somewhere, that the drought is creating dead trees. I don't know,
As a reference
I don't
to
know.
that.
yeah, I guess it's not a big deal, I'm not hung up on that one, but. And, yeah, and I guess we're calling it over months of time sudden. I guess, if you guys are you guys okay with threatening the powerhouses?
I am.
Yeah, I think it's,
Okay, so, and then a couple more down at the sudden, I could see unexpected emergency drought conditions, but, I mean, we've been doing this since April.
Again, these are key words for declaring an emergency.
Okay,
So the sudden and unexpected event is not the drought, in my mind. The
Yeah.
sudden unexpected event is the lack of runoff.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
okay, all right, I'm all right with that.
no, good job.
Okay, and then on page 4, 1, 2, 3, the first, be it further resolved, that under authority of applicable law, NID hereby adopts this resolution. It says, in order to achieve efficiencies and conservation, to achieve a 20% goal. And so, then in order to, so I was saying in an effort to with the goal of, I mean, so instead of saying in order to achieve, and then to achieve a 20%, just in an effort to achieve water use efficiencies and limitations conservation with the goal of achieving a 20% reduction. It makes it more like this is why we're doing this. This is what we're, what if we only get 18%? What if we only get 15%? What if we get 25? I mean, 20% is our goal, right? Is it mandatory that we reach 20%?
I think for purposes, Chip hasn't gotten to it yet, but there is a, be it resolved paragraph later on that talks about enforcement. And the mark here is 20%. And I think we want to be really clear that this is a requirement.
Okay,
Because if we do, hopefully we don't have to have any sort of enforcement action. But if there is someone out there that's really thumbing their nose and they're washing their sidewalk with irrigation water, or whatever they're doing, it's just blatant and repeated, been warned, and we've progressed to the point where this is our final option. We need to be able to say that they're in violation of this. So I think this is a requirement, not a goal.
So it's a requirement of every single customer to get 20%, not the district to get 20%.
Well, it would be if we changed all the orifices,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If we changed the orifices,
Yeah.
and we would do that if it
Yeah.
was earlier in the season, so.
All right,
Yeah,
okay. Be it further resolved, the A on the bottom, again, raw water or potable water, and public walkways, it says roadways instead of roadside ditches. I think that there's oftentimes there, at least with the raw water, if it runs off your property, it's not gonna go on the roadway right away. It's gonna go in the roadside ditch.
it's gonna start in the roadway on my road and then end up in the ditch.
Yep.
It's gonna run a long ways
Yep,
down the
mine
road
too.
first.
Oh, it runs on your road before it goes on the ditch? and it comes
Absolutely,
on your
because the
property?
road, because dirt roads are ditches by
Mhm.
design, by
Oh, you
default.
don't have
Yeah,
side.
they really are.
There's a lot of
that, yeah.
places up here that
Yeah.
don't have roadside.
All right, well, then
ditches.
Placer County can just let it go down.
And we
Nevada County doesn't maintain ditches.
Yeah.
Can we just add drains? Does that capture your?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We don't really have drains
I see
either.
it running
We don't
I
have
see it
drains.
We
running
don't have
along-
those here.
When I drive
Roadways
across,
is fine.
yeah, when I drive across at the time, it's never on the roadway, but there's water discussion along the sides of the road.
Right,
It's
right.
not on the roadway, but it's, we got rivers going down the side.
There.
I think you just add it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it, it does, there are
Roadways and
places,
ditches.
but not much of up here.
Yeah, well, there is Placer County too. Okay, I think that was all of my comments.
Those,
That was mine.
any others, before we take this and go see if we can perfect it? But before I do that, there's one thing that came up in my mind. One of the first things we discussed was that we need to be more specific about the drought pricing and
Mhm.
Yes.
reference what schedule it's on.
Yes.
As I sat here thinking about it, what we state in here is that these regulations are for all treated water customers. And I think referencing one schedule might be problematic for us, because there are multiple schedules depending on what kind of treated water customer you are. So this is across the board. Municipal gets the increase, commercial gets the increase, residential gets the increase. So I think what I'd like to say is referencing the schedules is a good thing, but I think we will leave out the specific schedule and just say, as referenced in the district's fee of schedules.
Perfect. That works fine. And that reminds me of another comment I had. Sorry.
Go for
Let
it.
me call the babysitter.
I have, just a quick question, on page 4, the be it resolved for the rules of ABC, it says, shall be at least, so the carryover target shall be at least 105,000 acre feet. And that's a different number than we've ever seen for the carryover target.
So
What's
that
based on?
stems from our drought contingency plan stages. That is actually a stage 3 target. In our drought contingency plan, it says that in a stage 3 drought, we aim to at least have 105,000 acre feet. That is something we can adjust. And by the way, if we do a stage 2 is 110,000 acre feet. So, I mean, if the board would
This
like
is
to.
the hybrid again.
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
board would like to increase that target and really
Well,
emphasize that customers can serve to hit that mark, we'd be glad to. do
That's
that.
why I was
Well-
in favor of stage 3.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
me
see
too.
that, so the 2015 plan, stage 2 is a 90,000 acre feet, and stage 3 is 80,000 acre feet. But on the new model, let me find it.
So stage 2 is in the district actions. Purchase available contract water to achieve a carryover target of 110,000 acre feet.
Oh, that's in the
Stage
new
2.
one. Okay,
Yes, correct.
That's in the
Yes,
new one.
yes. So, like I said, what we have there, that 105 is a stage 3 level. If we want to really, most of the other things we've put in place are stage 2. We can adjust that number to say, hey, our real goal here is 110,000 acre feet.
Well, our adopted one says only 90,000.
Or 120.
Our adopted drop
Now I'm
plan says
confused.
90,000.
Yeah, now it's getting really
They
confusing.
got-
We should stay with what we've adopted, I
Yeah.
think.
Don't change.
Well, what we've adopted is 90.
Well, isn't it a range? 92 something else?
So,
In the 2015, the board adopted, currently board
Okay,
adopted
but
drop.
wait, that was 2015, so my question to
2015,
Chip
so
is,
the one
has
that
it
was
been,
put in the,
has it been revised?
yeah, so the
Yeah.
latest version would be what we adopted in the ag water management.
Right,
right,
And that reference of.
110.
yeah. Okay.
But regardless, what we put in this resolution becomes our target.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
So, if you all are comfortable with 105, we'll leave it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just didn't know where it was from.
Okay.
We're good.
Yep.
I have a
Director Johansson.
So, with the volumetric increase in our rates of about 25%, the justification for that could be, and I'm not sure that fits here, is we're purchasing PG&E water that's costing us quite a bit of money in 14 and 15.
That's one
We
justification.
ran through, millions of dollars purchasing outside water and just subsidized everybody with those purchases. But with the increase in the volumetric price, can it be tied to the fact that we're purchasing PG&E or? that
It's only
needs to be-
one thing,
Or that
I
needs to
think.
be budgeted down the road?
So the
And increased
justification
staff.
came in your 218
Right.
analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And when was that, 2018, 2019? So it was a host of things. It's that the cost to run the districts, even when you're asking for conservation, is basically the same. There's a lot of fixed costs. It's additional costs like PG&E purchase, like CHIP staff running around chasing the ends of ditches, making sure we're not spilling water unnecessarily. So it actually, I think this is true of most water districts, it's more expensive to run the system in a drought year than it is in a normal year.
Yep.
And it's a whole host of reasons, but yes, one of those I think is the PG&E purchase.
And that one is in the whereas, by the way.
Yeah.
It's captured in here as a highlight.
I just wanted to,
It's there.
when people question why are we increasing the rates, we need to be upfront and say, hey,
Dan Allen of
yeah,
the package.
And all the increased mailings and all of that.
there's a
Right.
reason. And actually, this district is doing it cheaper than any other district I know, because some rates have gone up 10 times.
Except PC and WA.
Except PCWA, Placer County.
Go ahead. We're not them.
No,
Let's
we're
go back
not
to
them.
with the reality.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions, comments? So at this time, we will take a break for the staff to, what are they gonna do?
Edit.
Edit.
Produce a red line.
Wordsmith.
Produce a
Edit.
red line version,
How long?
as long as it takes
15
them.
Whiz bang.
15, 30 minutes?
How many?
30, let's say 30.
30 minutes enough?
Job well done, Dustin.
Okay, so we'll be taking a 30-minute break for those of you who are watching, and come back and see if we have a
That's when the public hearing will be. Well,
public hearing.
after we go through it,
So-
then the public hearing.
We'll come back, we'll display it for public and board.
Yeah.
We'll see if we caught everything. If we're good, whenever we're good, you'll bang the gavel, public hearing will open, public can then speak, and we'll close the public hearing once that's done, and then consider the resolution.
Okay,
Okay.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. We are back in session, having completed the edits to the resolution. Are they gonna come up on the screen for the? I'm gonna have to
Video closes.
Yes, please. Thank you. Take that. All right.
Okay. Would you like me to walk through each one of the red lines here?
I think that would be good.
Probably good.
We'll start right at the top. So at the very beginning, where the first whereas, we struck, and fire protection and prevention. It basically just says, and fire prevention and suppression purposes to match how it is in the second section. On the fifth whereas down, little typo, we added an A there. The next whereas, the top of page 2, we just swapped the timing of those to make chronological.
Oh, right.
The third whereas down, it shows all struck, that's just because we moved it. Okay. Page 3, we provided an edit to this section. Basically struck out the approximately 72% of the April 1st average, so now it says, as a result of the current emergency drought prevailing within the district's boundaries and based on the lack of runoff from snowpack in the district's watershed, et cetera.
Good edit.
That's a good edit.
Yeah, it is a good edit.
Page 4, at the bottom, we changed restricting to prohibiting.
Okay, thank you very much. I like that.
Top of page 5, these are all the irrigation changes from irrigation to raw water. And that really is all the changes in that entire section, A through H. Trying to get,
Roadways, drains also.
That's great.
yes, thank you.
Drains
Did I
in
miss
this.
that one? Yes, I did, yeah.
I apologize, but but it's probably not this, I mean, I've been talking about the, now we can't put it there, but prohibiting the use of water in unpermitted.
We will get there.
We added,
Okay.
we heard you.
Okay, page 5, in the first, be it further resolved, that's down there, A, we added as compared to 2020 usage. Basically, we're asking people to conserve 20%.
Usage spelled right? I don't think that's
Nope.
spelled right.
There's a typo.
Usage is not spelled right.
USAGE.
We're correcting it on the fly.
Right on.
Still is weird.
Got it.
Weird. I have it. I can fix that. It's weird.
Right.
Got it.
There we go.
Okay. And then a typo on A we fixed. We changed the time from 6 to 9 p.m. The next page, page 6, immediately has been followed by July 1st, to be very specific, and will remain until the drought emergency has been lifted by the board of directors. We added, pricing will be per the district schedule of fees.
But they're not seeing red lines?
No screen share?
Why, thank you.
Yeah,
Not screen sharing.
all you're seeing is the,
Oh, that's crazy. Let's
Thanks,
just stop that share. I'm gonna have to reshare. I don't know why. Let's try this.
We're gonna have to start over.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. Let's try this. I'm gonna scroll to the top here.
So, how do we know in,
I can see them now.
okay.
The board can see it on theirs either, but they're probably following along my printed.
So we have confirmation that the general public can see this version.
Yes, because I can see it here.
I can see it. too.
I can see it now,
Okay.
too.
Okay.
And you
I-
couldn't
yeah.
before.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right, I didn't realize
have it on
that.
screens before.
I
Right.
apologize for those of you watching along.
I was
that
reading.
You didn't see this version, so we'll start at the beginning again. Basically, the changes we have performed in the resolution are all going to be in red type here, the strike-throughs and the additions. Again, the first whereas, we struck protection and, we added and suppression. So that little section reads, and fire prevention and suppression. Again, that was to ensure that the two sections where this is referenced match and use the same language. The fifth whereas down, there was a typo, we added an A. Page 2, the whereas at the top that's in red is simply just the whereas that was the third one down, we pulled it to the top for chronological order. Page 3, the second whereas down, we struck approximately 72% of the April 1st average and added in, and based on the lack of runoff from snowpack. Let's see. Page 4 at the bottom, be it further resolved, we struck restricting and inserted prohibiting. Page 5, section A through H, we struck any word where it said irrigation and replaced it with raw to specify that's raw water. And then in A, we added drains after roadways. So any runoff that goes into a drain is also included now. At the bottom of that page, be it further resolved, section A, treated water customers will be required to reduce water usage by 20% as compared to 2020 usage. B, section A, as a typo, we put a capital W in. Additionally, that was A. In B, we switched the time from 6 to 9 p.m. Page 6, we inserted July 1st, 2021 as the specific date at which the pricing change will go into effect. At the end of that section, we put in the language, pricing will be per the district schedule of fee, equating for most customers to an approximate 25% increase in the volumetric rate. Hopefully that provides a little more clarification. If they need more, they can go to the schedule of fees. The next, be it further resolved, again, we changed irrigation to raw, same with A. Section B, we changed the time to match, 6 to 9 p.m. C, we changed irrigation to raw water. D was the new addition we discussed, that no fall water sales until the drought emergency has been lifted by the board of directors was added, and that's from our rules and regulations, section 50106. Section F, we added the verbiage that during the 2021 irrigation season, customers who request a reduction or who voluntarily forego water delivery during the 2021 irrigation season will maintain their priority of service once the drought emergency has been lifted. Section G, we added the specific date, and again, the language at the bottom was to reference the schedule of fees and emphasize that the 20%, it'll be an approximate 20% increase in the volumetric rate, so.
Up here it says 25% increase.
Correct, so per our drought pricing, as was set in Prop 218, the treated water rate is roughly 25%, the irrigation rate is about 20%. Yeah. And then we added, this one's for Rich, we added a section, so be it further resolved, except as otherwise modified by this resolution, district customers and other water users are required to follow the district's rules and regulations. This is so if we catch somebody who's violating our existing rules and regulations, we can use the enforcement section we're developing now to come after them under that regulation.
Thank you. Could it be added also that and applicable state, county, or state and federal laws? Because state laws applying to water are applicable here.
Wouldn't say say just automatically applicable. Like, we don't have to say don't kill somebody, because everybody knows you can't kill somebody. I'm not trying to be
Unless
sure.
it's self-defense. When
I'm giving you a hard time.
And did we not want to put anything about no out-of-district water sales?
That, we talked briefly about it. It's hard to sparse out and be that general because of the specifics of our out-of-district contracts.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because people are upset that people down in Placer County have to cut back so we can sell out of district water.
Right.
Well, so the state applicable laws, irrigated lands program, it's going to come into whether or not someone's an ag producer. You're looking at some other water usage requirements from the state that apply to us. So I think there's significant state laws that apply to water usage that are not NID's policies.
But the people that are under those requirements are made aware of it by the state, right?
Yeah, but I think we have to, what we're saying here, otherwise modified district customers and other water use required by the district's rules and regulations and state rules and regulations regarding water. It's going to come up and are you an ag producer or not? Are you a hobbyist? Are you landscaping?
I'm going to be general here. We say generally the district's rules and regulations all abide by the state's rules and regulations. If there's something that they're doing outside of our rules and regulations, but may fall under a state, that's under the state's jurisdiction, and we really don't have the authority. We would refer them to the state agency that has that authority.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but here we're gonna try to identify ag producers
Yeah, and I'm
down the road.
I'm thinking.
For this declaration?
Huh?
For this declaration?
Well, no. But irrigated lands program is one way to differentiate obvious from ag.
Well, I think both of them are subject to this. I don't think this resolution
I just
applies
want to
to
see it
one over the
broader.
other.
Yeah, I just wanted to see this a little bit broader and a little more.
I don't think we can claim something we don't have jurisdiction.
Actually, we have and then that's the big question. How much responsibility do we have? Because if we're aware of certain requirements.
So can you, Director Johansson, help me understand? I'm trying to think of an example where there's some kind of state or federal law prohibiting a water use that we don't already address in our rules and regs.
Well, read that and then let me know, if you would.
Read what?
Do you have a copy?
Well, since this is a public hearing,
Yeah.
I think we have to say what it is that you're referring and what we
Yes.
are reading.
Okay. So,
I just want to understand it before I summarize it. So what Director Johansson has handed me is one is a state water board, kind of like an FAQ type document. The other is a California State Association of Counties reminder on water use for cannabis cultivation. So this says that cultivators who choose to use alternative sources of water, like bulk water hauling, must get approval from the California Department of Food and Agriculture for any water it's delivered or used. And then the State Water Board document says, just kind of as a reminder, that between April 1st, 2021 and October 31st, 2021, no surface water may be diverted for cannabis cultivation. So what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you, Director Johansson, saying that we need to loop in these state requirements and then potentially enforce those state requirements?
no, I don't think we're the ones to enforce. But I think it needs to be clear that everybody needs to play by the rules.
There is I know this because I've been on phone calls with the State Water Board staff. There is a complaint procedure where, I mean, even if NID staff notice somebody violating these rules, NID staff could bring it to the State Water Board's attention. And they have their own enforcement process that they follow. So what I'm struggling with is, we could certainly make some language changes, but I don't know how we get to our own enforcement of something.
Don't want it. Yeah, don't want it.
I have a
That's
question.
not our job. Our job is to supply water under the applicable rules, regulations we have, and state rules.
So perhaps, Director Hanson, what you're saying is, Chip, when someone comes for a meter or whatever they have to do to get bulk water from NID, you ask them what's the purpose of the use that they're gonna use it for, correct?
Yes,
Do they ever say cannabis?
I'm sure the potential's there, and yes.
So if they say cannabis, then we could just provide them make a little thing, okay, here you go, here, please know that this is,
Yeah.
you have, this is,
Yeah.
these apply to you,
And that's probably fine, as long as they go to the CDFA
yeah,
and get their permit from them, and we're all good.
yeah.
So my question is, how much does that pertain to this document today versus the bigger picture? You know, I think we're getting off into the weeds about
Mhm.
details that
Well, all I wanted from the start was not into that conversation.
Okay.
All I wanted was just district rules, regulations, and applicable state and federal laws. That's all I wanted.
And that's in, is that in the new language?
No,
It's on page
it just says
5.
district rules.
District rules and regulations. And didn't Chip say that?
It says district rules and regulations.
They already,
All I said just add applicable state and federal laws. Which is kind of on all county documents.
Okay.
I don't care.
I'm not here to bust anybody's chops, I'm just.
Yeah.
We good with that?
I don't care.
I think,
I think it's unnecessary.
I think
because
it'll be covered by the fact that we already do that.
Right.
Right. Okay. Was that all, Chip? Are you done?
That was
So we're gonna go ahead and add it.
With that, are we gonna add it,
Do
or
we have a majority to add it? I think so.
what's the consensus?
Oh, consensus. That means 4.
What?
How many is the consensus? 4?
Oh,
I don't-
Dustin.
I don't have one, I don't have two.
I'm fine with it. If it doesn't make a difference, fine.
It seems like it's duplicative. It's like, it's already there.
Yeah.
They have to abide by state and federal laws.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think if it makes it clear for
If it
Rich,
makes
then
it
I'm
clear for
fine
Rich,
with
then
it.
I'm fine with it too.
Okay. So, one more time, Director Johansson, and any applicable state or federal laws?
Sure.
All of them.
Mm.
And all. Okay. Good? Okay.
I like this wordsmithing.
Is it applicable or relevant?
Applicable.
I mean, it's applicable, yeah.
It's applicable.
There's a whole lot of laws out there, but not, most of them are applicable.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Everybody good? Thank you for the edits. Somebody does this really fast. Who did that really fast?
That was Chris
Was that Chris?
Canyon.
Chris Topania did that really?
It's like right over her shoulder.
Really? Thank you.
Driving the car with Dad.
Thank you, Chris. She did what?
She said it's like driving the car with Dad.
Oh.
That's great.
Using our CHPs.
That's hilarious.
I was thinking, oh, this could take hours, and somebody have to type this all up. Okay,
Miracles of
there we go.
technology.
All right, so at this point, we will open up for a public hearing. If members of the public would like to participate at this time, comments on the resolution, star 9 your phone, and we'll take those at this time. Am I looking at the right screen? So, yeah, no hands. Where's, I won't say any names. Would anybody like to comment, anybody watching like to comment on this resolution today? Resolution escalating drought response and enhancing conservation measures. Star 9 your phone, last chance. If you're listening, like to comment. Okay, seeing none.
Close the public hearing?
Close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion from the board to adopt this resolution.
Mr. President, I would move for the adoption of resolution number 2021-21, escalating drought response and enhancing conservation measures,
As amended?
as amended, and red lines.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Director Hall, seconded, moved and seconded. Let's see, we just had a public hearing. Do we have to ask for public comment again?
No.
No, okay. I'm still new at this, right? Okay, Madam Secretary, any further discussion by the board? All right, Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that is our item for today.
Thanks, Chip.
Thank you, Chip.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
Dustin.
yeah, thanks for the
Great.
the fast edits. We'll see you all July 14th, for the next regular board meeting. Meeting's adjourned.